And it's the same principle as a chain letter. I mean, if you're very early on a chain letter, you can make money. There's no money created by chain letters. In fact, there's the frictional cost of envelopes and postage and that sort of thing. So the net, there's some money destroyed a little bit. And there's money destroyed by the frictional costs of trading and investing. That comes out of investors' pockets. But the manias that periodically take place, and not just in stocks. We had a similar mania. Well, I'm not necessarily similar. We certainly had a mania in farmland here in Nebraska 20 years ago, and land which couldn't produce, we'll say, more than $70 or $80 an acre would sell for $2,000 an acre at times when interest rates were 10%. Well, that math will kill you. And it killed the people who bought it at those prices, and it killed a great many banks here in Nebraska who lent based on that sort of thing. But while it was going on, everybody thought it was wonderful because every farm was selling for more than the similar farm had sold for a month earlier. And it was momentum investing in farmland. And in the end, valuation does count, but it can go on a long time. And when you get a huge number of participants playing with ever increasing sums, it creates its own apparent truth for a very considerable period of time. It doesn't go on forever, and whether it has fallout to the whole economy like it probably did in the late 20s, or whether it's just an isolated industry or sector where the bubble bursts and it really doesn't affect other values, who knows? But 5 or 10 years from now, you will know. Charlie?
Well, I think the reason we use the phrase wretched excess is that there are wretched consequences. If you mix the mathematics of the chain letter or the Ponzi scheme with some legitimate development like the development of the internet, you are mixing something which is wretched and irrational and has bad consequences with something that has very good consequences. But if you mix raisins with
That's why they have me write the annual report.
The worst years of my life.
That's why they have me write the annual report.
Early 30s. It started when I was 29. My marriage fell apart. I got divorced, lost the house in South Pasadena to my wife, moved into dreadful bachelor quarters at the University Club. I thought that was rock bottom. I was wrong. 2 years later, when I was 31, I buried my 9-year-old son. His name was Teddy Leukemia. In those days, there was no treatment, no hope, just a diagnosis and a countdown. I would go into the hospital, hold him in my arms, and then walk the streets of Pasadena crying. My friend Rick Guerin remembers seeing me during that time. He said I looked like a man whose soul had been ripped out. And in a way it had. By the time Teddy died in 1955, my weight was down 10 to 15 pounds below normal. I was still living in those dreadful bachelor quarters, still driving that terrible yellow Pontiac with the awful paint job. My daughter Molly once asked me, "Daddy, this car is just awful. Why do you drive it?" I told her, to discourage gold diggers. That was the kind of dark humor that got me through. At 31, I had every excuse to give up, every reason to drown my sorrows in alcohol or self-pity, every justification to become a victim of my circumstances. But I refused to give in. And that decision to keep going, to refuse self-pity, to treat the tragedy as an opportunity to learn rather than a reason to quit, that decision shaped everything that came after. I'm telling you this not to impress you with my hardships. Everyone has hardships. What I want you to understand is this: life will deliver terrible blows, horrible blows, unfair blows. The question isn't whether you'll face disaster. The question is how you'll respond when it comes. And if you're over 50 right now, I need you to pay very close attention, because there are 3 specific disasters that destroy more retirements than any market crash, any recession, any bad investment decision. I've watched all 3 destroy people I know. Good people, smart people, people who did everything right and still ended up with nothing. Let me tell you about them. Before I describe these 3 disasters, I want to give you something important. Permission. If you're behind on your retirement savings, if you've made mistakes, if you're scared about your financial future, I want you to know that the deck has been stacked against you from the beginning. The system isn't designed to make you wealthy. It's designed to keep you working, keep you spending, keep you dependent. Banks profit when you borrow. Corporations profit when you spend. Financial advisors profit when you're confused. Media companies profit when you're scared. Nobody profits when you're financially free, except you. So if you feel like you've been swimming upstream your whole life, you're not wrong. You have been. But that doesn't mean you can't win. It just means you need to understand the game better than most people do. And understanding starts with knowing your enemies. These 3 disasters are your enemies. Learn them, prepare for them, and when they come, because at least one of them will come, you'll know exactly what to do. Before we go deeper, I want to hear from you. Drop your age in the comments, and if this resonates with you, hit that subscribe button. We're building something here, a community of people who refuse to be victims of circumstance. I went through a divorce at 29. It nearly destroyed me financially, but at 29, I had time to recover. My wealth multiplier, the amount my money could grow before I needed it, was still enormous. $1 saved at 29 could become $40 or $50 by retirement. Think of your wealth multiplier like a tailwind. At 30, you have a hurricane at your back. Every step you take covers 10 feet. At 55, the wind has died. You're walking on flat ground. At 60, you're pushing into a headwind. Every step forward takes 3 times the effort. Divorce after 50 is a completely different animal. They call it gray divorce, divorce among people 50 and older. And it's becoming an epidemic. The rate of gray divorce has doubled since 1990. For adults over 65, it's tripled. In 1970, about 8% of Americans who divorced were over 50. By 2019, that number had jumped to 36%. More than 1 in 3 divorces now happen to people in their 50 seconds, 60 seconds, and 70 seconds. And the financial devastation is staggering. I knew a woman, let's call her Margaret, who divorced at 54 after 26 years of marriage. She had been a stay-at-home mother for most of that time, supporting her husband's career, raising their children, managing the household. She was brilliant at what she did. The house ran like clockwork. The children thrived. Her husband's career flourished because he never had to worry about anything at home. But none of that showed up on a balance sheet. When the divorce was finalized, she received half the assets. On paper, that seemed fair. But here's what the paper didn't show. Her husband kept his career, his income, his professional network, his earning potential. He kept the relationships with clients he'd built over 3 decades. He kept the reputation, the credentials, the momentum. Margaret got half of what they had accumulated, but none of the engine that had created it. It's like splitting a farm in half. One person gets the land, the barn, the equipment. The other person gets a stack of cash equal to half the farm's value. Sounds fair, but the person with the farm can grow crops next year and the year after. The person with the cash can only spend it. Within 5 years, her ex-husband had rebuilt his net worth and then some. Margaret was slowly depleting hers. She told me once, I did everything right. I supported his career. I raised our children. And now I'm 59 years old. My resume has a 20-year gap, and I'm competing for entry-level jobs against people half my age. The research confirms what I saw with Margaret. Women over 50 experience a 45% decline in their standard of living after divorce. Men experience a 21% decline. That's not a gap, that's a chasm. And it gets worse. Gray divorced women over 63 have a poverty rate of 27%. That's 9 times higher than the poverty rate for married couples of the same age. Let me say that again. 9 times higher. I watched Margaret go from a comfortable upper middle class life to worried about whether she could afford her blood pressure medication. Not because she was foolish, not because she made bad decisions, because divorce after 50 is a financial catastrophe that most people are completely unprepared for. The math is brutal. When you're 30 and you split your assets in half, you have 35 years of compounding to rebuild. Your wealth multiplier is still 20x or more. When you're 55 and you split your assets in half, you have maybe 10 years. Your wealth multiplier is down to 2.5x. Same percentage loss, completely different impact. And it's not just the asset split, it's the expense explosion. One household becomes 2. One mortgage or rent payment becomes 2. One set of utilities becomes 2. One grocery budget becomes 2. One car insurance policy becomes 2. I remember talking to a man at a shareholder meeting. He was 58, had just finalized his divorce. He told me his monthly expenses had increased by $2,400, while his income had dropped by $3,000 because his wife had been contributing to the household. That's a $5,400 per month swing in the wrong direction. He asked me what to do. I didn't have a good answer. The math was simply too cruel. At his age, with his expenses, he would need to work until 72 just to get back to where he was before the divorce. Now, I'm not saying you should stay in a miserable marriage for financial reasons. That's a terrible way to live. Sometimes divorce is the right decision, the healthy decision, the necessary decision. What I am saying is this: if you're over 50 and married, you need to understand what divorce would do to your financial situation, both of you, because whether it happens by choice or by circumstance, the financial impact is devastating. And if you're already divorced, you need to understand that your timeline for recovery is compressed. You cannot afford to make additional mistakes. Every dollar matters more now than it ever did before. Here's what I've learned from watching people navigate this disaster. First, don't make major financial decisions in the first year after divorce. Your judgment is compromised by emotion. Wait until you can think clearly. I've seen people sell houses at the wrong time, cash out investments at market lows, make impulsive purchases to feel better, all in the fog of post-divorce emotion. Wait. Second, rebuild your income immediately. If you've been out of the workforce, get back in. Any job is better than no job. You can upgrade later. The gap on your resume grows more damaging with each passing month. Third, slash your expenses to the bone. This isn't the time for pride. Move to a smaller place. Drive an older car. Cancel subscriptions you don't need. Every dollar you don't spend is a dollar that can compound for your future. Fourth, and this is crucial, don't compound the tragedy with additional tragedies. I said this after Teddy died, and I'll say it again now. You should never, when facing some unbelievable tragedy, let one tragedy increase to 2 or 3 through your failure of will. Divorce is one tragedy. Making panic-driven financial decisions is a second tragedy. Falling into self-pity and giving up is a third. 1 is survivable. 3 is not. I've never been fired from a job, but I've watched it happen to hundreds of people I know. And for those over 50, job loss isn't just a setback. It's often a financial death sentence. The data is sobering. Among job seekers 55 and older, nearly a quarter are long-term unemployed, meaning they've been out of work for 27 weeks or more. That's 6 months without a paycheck. 6 months of depleting savings. 6 months of watching your retirement fund shrink instead of grow. and it gets worse the longer you're out. Studies show that people who are long-term unemployed are significantly less likely to find employment even 15 months later. The skills erode, the confidence erodes, and employers, whether they admit it or not, view a long gap in employment as a red flag. I've seen it happen. A 5-7-year-old executive, let's call him Richard, gets laid off in a restructuring. He's been with the company for 18 years. He has a corner office, a team of 12, a reputation for excellence. None of that matters when the spreadsheet says your salary is too high. Richard assumes he'll find something comparable within a few months. He's talented, he has experience, he has a network, he's been recruited by competitors before. But this time is different. This time he's 57, not 47. 6 months later, he's still looking. His savings are depleting faster than he expected. The COBRA payments alone are $2,100 a month. His confidence is shaken. He starts wondering if the problem is him. A year later, he's taking a job at 60% of his previous salary just to have income again. The title is 2 levels below what he had. He reports to someone 15 years younger. He told me, I used to run a department, now I'm grateful just to have a desk. The research shows that even when older workers do find new employment, their hourly wages are 14% lower 1 year after a long-term unemployment spell, and many never fully recover to their previous earning level. This is the cruel mathematics of job loss after 50. Your peak earning years are supposed to be your late 40 seconds and 50 seconds. That's when you have the most experience, the most expertise, the most value to offer. That's also when you should be making your final push toward retirement savings. Job loss cuts the legs out from under all of that. It's like training for a marathon for 20 years and then breaking your leg at mile 20. You can still finish, but it's going to hurt a lot more than it should have. And it's not just the lost income, it's the lost retirement contributions, the lost employer matching, the lost health insurance that forces you onto expensive COBRA or marketplace plans, the lost momentum. I watched Richard burn through $80,000 in savings during his 14-month job search, not from extravagant living, just from mortgage payments, health insurance premiums, car payments, and basic expenses while waiting for the next opportunity. When he finally found a new job, he was essentially starting over on his retirement savings. At 58, the wealth multiplier at 58 is about 2x. He needed to save twice as much money just to end up with the same retirement he would have had before. Now, I want to be clear about something. Job loss after 50 is not your fault. Companies lay off older workers because they're more expensive, they carry higher salaries, they have more health issues, they require more benefits, their pension obligations are larger. From a pure spreadsheet perspective, replacing a five-year-old making $150,000 with a 5-year-old making $90,000 is an easy decision. It's not personal. It's not about your performance. It's about the numbers. It's not fair, but it's reality. And reality, as I've said many times, must be recognized even when you don't like it, especially when you don't like it. The question isn't whether this could happen to you. The question is whether you'll be prepared when it does. Here's what I've learned from watching people navigate this disaster. First, while you're still employed, build what I call an income bridge. Savings specifically designated to cover 18 to 24 months of expenses, not 3 months, not 6 months. 18 to 24 months. The average job search for someone over 50 takes significantly longer than for younger workers. Plan accordingly. Hope for 3 months. Prepare for 18. Second, never stop building your skills and network. The worst time to start networking is when you need a job. The best time is years before. Stay visible in your industry. Keep learning new tools. Make yourself hard to replace and easy to hire. Third, consider your vulnerability. If you're in a position that could be eliminated, start preparing now. Look for other opportunities. Develop additional income streams. Position yourself so that job loss is an inconvenience, not a catastrophe. Fourth, and this is where most people fail, do not let your ego determine your recovery timeline. I've watched people turn down decent job offers because the title wasn't as impressive or the salary wasn't as high as their previous position. They spent an extra year looking for the right opportunity while their savings evaporated. My Uncle Fred was an architect during the Great Depression, a real architect, designed beautiful buildings, had a degree, had a reputation. When the building projects dried up, he didn't sit around waiting for the perfect commission. He took any work he could get. He designed chicken coops. He drew plans for outhouses. He did whatever paid. His friends thought he was crazy. You're an architect, they said. You can't design chicken coops. I can't eat my pride, he told them. He survived. Many of his peers who held out for appropriate work did not. Ego is expensive. You cannot afford it after 50. Finally, remember this. Job loss, like divorce, is one disaster. How you respond determines whether it stays one disaster or multiplies into several. When you get that phone call or that meeting invitation that you know is bad news, you have a choice. You can spiral into self-pity, anger, and paralysis. You can spend months asking, why me? And how could they? And don't they know what I've contributed? Or you can take a breath, recognize the reality, and start solving the problem. I've said this many times, and I'll say it again. Don't drift into self-pity because it doesn't solve any problems. It's always counterproductive. Self-pity is the wrong way to think. And when you avoid it, you get a great advantage over everybody else because self-pity is a standard response. You can train yourself out of it. If divorce is the most emotionally devastating disaster and job loss is the most ego-crushing, health crisis is the most financially brutal, the numbers are almost too terrible to believe. Medical expenses directly cause 66.5% of bankruptcies in America. That makes health problems the leading cause of bankruptcy in this country by a massive margin. Every year, approximately 530,000 American families file for bankruptcy due to medical bills. 500,000 families every single year. And here's what makes it even more tragic. 56% of people filing medical bankruptcy actually have health insurance. Insurance that was supposed to protect them. Insurance they paid for month after month, year after year. Wasn't enough. Out-of-pocket costs, deductibles, treatments not covered, medications not included, out-of-network providers. They didn't choose all of it. Adds up until even insured families find themselves choosing between financial ruin and medical care. 45% of Americans worry that a major health event will bankrupt them. And based on the data, they're right to worry. I've watched this happen to people I care about. A couple I knew, Tom and Barbara, both in their late 50 seconds, had done everything right, saved consistently for 30 years, invested wisely in a diversified portfolio, built up nearly $800,000 for retirement. They were on track for a comfortable retirement at 65. Then Tom was diagnosed with cancer, stage 3, aggressive but treatable. The treatment was successful, he survived, but the bills destroyed them. Started with the surgery, then the chemotherapy, then the radiation, then the follow-up scans every 3 months, then the medications, some of them $3,000 a month even after insurance. Even with good insurance, the out-of-pocket costs exceeded $120,000 over 2 years. Their deductible, their out-of-pocket maximum, the drugs that weren't fully covered, the providers who turned out to be out of network, the experimental treatment that insurance refused to pay for. They depleted their emergency fund in the first 6 months. Then they started drawing from retirement accounts, paying 10% penalties and income taxes on early withdrawals. Then they took out a second mortgage on their home. Then they started putting medical bills on credit cards. By the time Tom was in remission, they had $180,000 left at 59 and 61 years old. Tom survived the cancer. Their retirement did not. Barbara told me, we did everything we were supposed to do. We saved, we invested, we had insurance, and it still wasn't enough. She wasn't bitter, just exhausted and scared about what comes next. This is the cruel irony of the American healthcare system. The treatments that save your life can destroy your financial future. You end up healthy enough to work until you're 75 because you no longer have enough money to retire. It's like winning a battle but losing the war. You beat the disease, but the disease beat your future. And it's not just catastrophic illness, it's also disability. A health event that prevents you from working, a back injury, a stroke, a chronic condition that limits your mobility, cuts off your income, while simultaneously generating medical expenses. The double blow is often unsurvivable without preparation. Now, I recognize that much of this is beyond individual control. You cannot choose whether you get cancer. You cannot decide not to have a heart attack. You cannot will your way out of a chronic disease. But you can control your preparation and your response. Here's what I've learned from watching people navigate this disaster. First, maximize your health insurance coverage when you're over 50. This is not the time to choose the cheapest plan with the highest deductible. Yes, the premiums are higher for comprehensive coverage, but the protection is worth it. A $200 per month difference in premiums is $2,400 per year. That's trivial compared to a $100,000 medical bill. Second, build a separate health emergency fund beyond your regular emergency fund, beyond your retirement savings. Money specifically designated for unexpected medical costs. At minimum, have enough to cover your insurance's out-of-pocket maximum. If your out-of-pocket max is $8,000, have $8,000 set aside specifically for that purpose. If you can save 2 years worth of that maximum. Third, understand that health is an investment, not an expense. Every dollar you spend on prevention, on exercise, on nutrition, on stress management, on regular checkups, on sleep, is money that might prevent a catastrophic health event later. I've never understood people who won't spend $500 on a gym membership but will happily spend $500 on things that actively harm their health. The math doesn't make sense. You're betting against yourself. Fourth, have difficult conversations about long-term care. Long-term care, nursing homes, assisted living, home health aides is extraordinarily expensive. The average cost of a private room in a nursing home is over $100,000 per year. Medicare doesn't cover it. Most health insurance doesn't cover it. Without planning, long-term care can consume an entire lifetime of savings in just a few years. I've watched estates built over decades evaporate in 36 months of nursing home care. Consider long-term care insurance if you're still healthy enough to qualify. Consider your family situation. Have honest conversations with your spouse or children about what happens if one of you needs extended care. These conversations are uncomfortable. Having them is far less uncomfortable than the alternative. Finally, remember what I said earlier. You should never let one tragedy multiply into several. Health crisis is one tragedy. Financial panic is a second. Giving up on your future is a third. I lost the vision in my left eye years ago. A botched cataract surgery, then complications, then a second surgery that made things worse. Then eventually the eye had to be removed entirely because the pain was unbearable. Did I feel sorry for myself? Of course. I'm human. I spent weeks in pain, angry at the doctors, frustrated at the unfairness of it, but I didn't let the self-pity win. When my remaining eye started having problems and I thought I might go completely blind, do you know what I did? I started learning Braille. not because I'd given up hope, because I refused to be a victim of circumstances. Whatever happened, I was going to adapt and keep going. If I went blind, I would be a blind man who could read. If I kept my sight, I would have learned something useful anyway. That's the mindset that separates people who recover from disaster from people who don't. 3 disasters: divorce, job loss, health crisis. Statistically, if you live past 50, you will face at least one of them. Many people will face 2. Some unlucky souls will face all 3. But here's what I want you to understand. The disaster itself doesn't determine your outcome. Your response does. I've seen people recover from devastating divorce and rebuild their financial lives stronger than before. I've seen people use job loss as the catalyst to start businesses that made them wealthier than any salary ever could. I've seen people survive catastrophic illness and emerge with a clarity about what matters that transformed how they lived and saved. And I've seen people crumble under far smaller challenges, people with more resources, more advantages, more support, who simply gave up. The difference isn't luck, it isn't resources, it isn't intelligence. The difference is mindset. Let me tell you what I've learned about the mindset that survives disaster. First, survivors recognize reality. They don't pretend the disaster didn't happen. They don't minimize it. They don't engage in magical thinking about how everything will work out if they just stay positive. They look at the situation clearly, honestly, and without flinching. They assess the damage. They calculate what they have left. They determine what must be done. Reality must be recognized even when you don't like it, especially when you don't like it. Second, survivors refuse self-pity. I've said this multiple times already, and I'll say it again because it's that important. Self-pity is poison. It feels justified. It feels earned. After all, terrible things happen to you. You have every right to feel sorry for yourself. But it solves nothing. It generates nothing. It only deepens the hole you're in. Every time you find yourself drifting into self-pity, I don't care what the cause, your child could be dying of cancer. Self-pity is not going to improve the situation. It's a ridiculous way to behave. Third, survivors act quickly, not rashly, not in panic, but quickly. Every day you delay dealing with financial disaster is a day the damage compounds. Interest accrues on debts, savings deplete faster. Opportunities pass. The hole gets deeper. I've watched people lose 6 months to denial and depression after a financial blow. Those 6 months often made the difference between recovery and permanent damage. Grieve if you need to, but act while you grieve. Fourth, survivors maintain perspective. The ancient philosopher Epictetus was born a slave, lived in poverty, was maimed in body, and yet he wrote, "Here lies Epictetus, a slave, maimed in body, the ultimate in poverty, and favored by the gods, despite everything." That's perspective. Your disaster, whatever it is not the worst thing that has ever happened to anyone. It's not even the worst thing that has happened this week somewhere in the world. This isn't meant to minimize your pain. It's meant to remind you that pain is survivable. People have survived worse and thrived. So can you. Fifth, survivors find the opportunity in the disaster. Every mischance in life is an opportunity to behave well. Every mischance in life is an opportunity to learn something. Your duty is not to be submerged in self-pity, but to utilize the terrible blow in constructive fashion. I believe this with everything I have. The worst moments of my life, losing Teddy, the divorce, losing my eye, all of them taught me things I could not have learned any other way. All of them made me stronger, wiser, more resilient. I would not choose to go through them again, but I would not trade what I learned from them either. Let me bring this back to something practical. If you're over 50 and you haven't yet faced one of these three disasters, here's what you do right now. First, assess your vulnerability to each disaster. How stable is your marriage? Not how happy, how stable. Would you survive financially if it ended tomorrow? Do you know where all the money is? Do you have income of your own? How secure is your job? What would you do if you got the call next Monday that your position was being eliminated? How long could you survive without income? How protected are you against health catastrophe? Do you have the insurance, the savings, the plan? What's your out-of-pocket maximum? Could you pay it? Be honest with yourself. Brutal honesty now is far better than brutal reality later. Second, build buffers, emergency fund. 18 to 24 months of expenses, not 3 to 6. I know that sounds like a lot. I know it takes years to build. Start anyway. Health fund, at minimum, your insurance is out-of-pocket maximum. Ideally, 2 years' worth. Skill fund, ongoing investment in your marketability, whether or not you currently need it. Third, have the conversations you've been avoiding. Talk to your spouse about finances. Really talk. Not, we should save more. Actual numbers. Know where you stand. Know what divorce would mean, not because you're planning it, but because reality demands acknowledgement. Talk to your employer about your future. Understand where you stand. Read the signs. If layoffs are coming, would your position be cut? Talk to your doctor about your health. Get the screenings. Know your risks. Don't avoid the checkup because you're afraid of what you might find. Fourth, create a disaster plan. Write down exactly what you would do if each disaster struck, not in vague terms, in specific, concrete steps. If you lose your job, I will immediately apply for unemployment, update my resume, contact these 10 people in my network, and begin looking for any income source within 48 hours. If you face divorce, I will consult an attorney before making any decisions, refuse to make major financial moves for 6 months, and begin rebuilding income immediately. If you face health crisis, I will utilize these insurance benefits, access these savings, and contact these family members for support. Having a plan doesn't prevent disaster, but it prevents the paralysis that makes disaster worse. Fifth, start today, not tomorrow, not next month, not after the holidays, not when things calm down at work. Today. I've watched too many people plan to prepare and never actually do it. They're going to start saving more next year. They're going to update their resume next month. They're going to have that conversation after the holidays. And then the disaster comes, and they're not ready. The best time to build your buffer was 10 years ago. The second best time is today. I'm nearly 100 years old now. I've seen everything. Depressions, recessions, wars, pandemics, bull markets, bear markets, fortunes built and fortunes destroyed. And in all that time, watching thousands of people navigate the ups and downs of financial life, I've learned one fundamental truth. The goal isn't to avoid disaster. That's impossible. Disaster comes for everyone, eventually. The goal is to survive disaster, to endure it, to learn from it, to come out the other side still standing. And that's not about money, ultimately. It's about character. It's about refusing to feel sorry for yourself when self-pity would be completely justified. It's about recognizing reality clearly, even when reality is terrible. It's about acting decisively even when you're scared. It's about treating every setback as an opportunity to behave well and learn something. When I was 31, divorced, broke, watching my son die inch by inch, I had a choice. I could become a victim of my circumstances, or I could become someone who overcame them. I chose to overcome, not because I was special, not because I was strong, because I understood that self-pity doesn't solve problems, because I knew that dwelling on tragedy only creates more tragedy. And here I am, nearly 70 years later, having built more wealth than I ever imagined possible, having lived a life fuller and richer than I deserved, not despite the disasters, in some ways because of them. The disasters taught me what I was capable of. They burned away the excuses. They forced me to become the person I needed to be. So when I tell you that you can survive whatever financial disaster comes your way after 50, I'm not giving you empty encouragement. I'm telling you from experience. Divorce didn't destroy me. Losing my son didn't destroy me. Losing my eye didn't destroy me. Job loss won't destroy you. Health crisis won't destroy you. Even divorce won't destroy you unless you let it. The three disasters I've described will come for some of you, maybe all of you. And when they come, you'll have a choice. You can go down and stay down. You can drift into self-pity. You can let one tragedy become two, then three, then an entire life of misery. Or you can do what survivors do. You can recognize reality, refuse self-pity, act quickly, maintain perspective, find the opportunity in the disaster. The choice is yours. It's always been yours, and you're making it right now, whether you realize it or not. Every day you fail to prepare is a vote for victimhood. Every day you face reality and build your buffers is a vote for survival. I know which one I chose at 31. I know which one I've chosen every day since. What will you choose? If this resonated with you, I have one request. Don't just feel inspired. Do something today. Before you go to bed tonight, calculate your buffers. Have one difficult conversation. Write down one specific action you'll take to prepare for disaster. Inspiration fades, action compounds, and compounding and investing in learning, in character, is the most powerful force in the universe. Use it wisely. That's what I wish someone had told me at your age. That's what I'm telling you now. Now I want to hear from you. What's the biggest lesson you're taking away from this? What's the one thing you're going to do differently starting today? Drop it in the comments. Not for me, for yourself. Because when you write something down, when you declare it publicly, you're far more likely to actually do it. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, a friend going through divorce, a family member who just lost their job, anyone over 50 who's worried about their future, share this with them. Sometimes the right words at the right time can change someone's entire trajectory. Be that person for someone else. Subscribe if you haven't. We'll keep having these conversations. Real wisdom, no hype, just what actually works. I'll see you in the next one.